Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode. Today we have John. He's one of my best colleagues, and we work together. I have the pleasure to work with him. He's a really hard worker, and he's very smart resident. John did his med school back in Australia, and he was able to match here in Canada. So today he will tell us about his experience. Welcome, John.
Hi, Roupen. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And it was my pleasure to work with you. I learned so much. Roupen's amazing. He's a really smart resident and a really good leader. And more than happy to come on the show and spread some of the knowledge or anything that kind of helped me along the way.
Nice, nice. Thank you so much, my friend. Okay, so let's get started. John, tell me a bit about your med school. Where did you med school? How was it? How long did it take? Yeah, go ahead.
So I had a pretty interesting path to medicine. I finished my undergrad, I had wrote my MCATs, and I was just getting my Canadian applications ready and getting ready to apply to Canadian schools. I'm from British Columbia, grew up in North Vancouver, and I was really, really hoping to go to UBC, and I was putting my applications together. And at the same time, I actually had a friend that had actually already started his application to dentistry at the University of Sydney in Australia. So we actually reconnected, funny enough, on Snapchat of all platforms. You know, he had sent me a Snapchat and I said, "Hey, how's it going? What are you up to nowadays?" And he's like, "Oh, believe it or not, I'm actually pursuing dentistry in Australia." And I was like, "What? I didn't even know that was a thing." And, I'm getting all my Canadian applications ready, and they have all these, the applications are crazy. They're so long. You have to get reference letters and all this.
Yeah.
And, I was putting it together, and he said, "Hey, why don't you try and see if they have medicine?" And he's like, "There's this company. It's amazing. It's called OzTrek." And basically, I looked, and there was tons of Australian programs, and all of my grades and kind of my portfolio and what I had, my CV, it really reflected, it seemed like a great opportunity with what I had. And essentially, I applied to multiple schools and got multiple interviews. It was really exciting. It was so fast. It was crazy. I remember I was shopping at Costco with my mom, and I had literally connected with this friend. And that evening, I had started the process of my applications. And it was really exciting. I was like, this almost seems too good to be true, really. And then before I knew it, one of their agents was contacting me, and I was starting the process of picking schools, and then I had interviews. Anyhow, fast forwarding, I ended up getting a spot at the University of Sydney, and it's an amazing place to study if you can ever have the opportunity to go or even visit. It's such a beautiful campus that it's literally like a tourist destination. I remember walking to school, you'd see tourists with selfie sticks and people around taking photos. It's literally like Hogwarts. You should type it in, University of Sydney Medical School. And it was just a great experience from start to finish. I had a chance to, leave the nest. It was the first time I was moving away from home.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody there except the one friend. He actually ended up getting into the dentistry program. We ended up being roommates and, obviously good friends, and all throughout the process, and we're still really, really good friends. But I met so many people, and I remember it was just an amazing experience from start to finish. I decided to go there a month before because I had heard how beautiful Australia was. And that's probably one of the best months of my life. I remember we were going to the beach every single day. This is obviously way, way, way before COVID. So just being a tourist, going to the zoo, just amazing spots in Australia. And then, the medical program started, and that was obviously a big shock to the system. But overall, I felt like it was a very, very, very good program. I feel like it made me a really good resident and a really good candidate to make my way back. And I felt really, really blessed to have the opportunity to study there.
Wow. So that's really so in one day your entire life changed, and so you
Literally.
applied to any medical school here in Canada. You just applied to
I
Australia.
didn't even apply to, so the way it works in Australia is their medical school residency, it starts in January. So it goes with the actual calendar year, right? Whereas in Canada, it starts in July. So if you do the math, it's a 6-month, it's kind of staggered. So the applications, I didn't even have the opportunity to apply to Canadian schools. I had been accepted to, the University of Sydney, and then I got into a couple other schools too. I think I got into University of Brisbane. Oh, no, sorry. It's called Griffith. I got into Griffith. And I got into the University of Sydney by I want to say May. It was like, you were accepted. Do you want to take your offer? You have a week or two, which I'm trying to think. It was basically like in a way where I didn't even send off my Canadian applications. I had found out way before that things were looking good. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to just take this opportunity. I'm not going to say no. And because I was kind of at a crossroads, right? If I would have, it was in such a way where if I declined my offers in Australia, I would have had to gamble on the Canadian applications. And let's say I didn't get in, you all know how it works. It's one whole year, right? So I would miss out. I was like, no, I can't do this. This seems like it's meant to be. And I just took a leap of faith. And that's kind of how I am. I find that I'm a really big opportunist. And when I see opportunity in front of me, I wouldn't want to leave it on the table. And I'm so glad that I made the decision to go, because it all works out in the end, right? That's what I find.
Yeah. And how many years is med school there?
4 years. So they have, so for most Canadians going there, you will actually, for all Canadians, all internationals, you'll have to do the postgraduate. You'll have to do the postgraduate format. But Australians, they have a curriculum where it's actually the 6-year program, but I mean, that doesn't pertain to us. So, but those would be the people who have they write, I can't remember the exam's called, but there's a high school exam that you write. And if you get a certain score, they go straight into the 6-year program. Gotcha. I don't believe you can do that as an international. I know at the University of Sydney, you wouldn't be able to. However, I think there may be some schools in Australia that do that. And I know some schools in Ireland do that.
Interesting. So tell me a bit about the Canadian exams. And after you did your med school there, when did you do the Canadian exams? During med school or after? What resources did you use?
So that's a very, very good question. I would say with regards to the exams, at the University of Sydney, I thought it was a great environment and circumstance to kind of make your way back if you wanted to. Because we had a program, we had actually a group called AMSA. So it was American Medical Student Association, or NAMSA, sorry, North America Medical Students Association. So it was very good. It was university students who, were a group that were literally the sole purpose of the group was to provide you with resources, hear from alumni, walk through exams and kind of how they run and how to prepare for them. So that was really helpful, because think about it, you have, a group of students who are all kind of like-minded and all want the same kind of goal. And I thought that was a great thing for me to get involved in. And if whatever school you end up in, you should, consider trying to either seek out friends that are, also trying to, get back to Canada or the US. And, you can even form a group or start a group, because I think that's really helpful. It's good to know that you're not alone. And essentially, I remember what we did was, very early on in first year med school, we got introduced to kind of these exams, and we could go to seminars. So I learned about the NAC-OSCe and how I had to write it, and the MCCQE one. And, from my colleagues that kind of the alumni who had made it back, found out kind of the best times to write it. With regards to the times, so I wrote the NAC-OSCe first. I remember writing it in the beginning of 4th year, in March. I believe there was 2 times when I wrote it. There was a March time and a September time. I wrote it in March.
Yeah.
Now, with our curriculum, it happened to be just after the Canadian electives, or maybe just at the tail end, which I thought was very, very helpful. Because the difference in Australia and Canada is that Australia, after you finish your 4 years of med school, you have to do an extra year internship. So your clerkship isn't, you don't get as much hands-on, and you don't get your own patient. So when I went in Canada, I found that prepared me for the NAC very well. If you can do internal medicine CTU at the NAC, you'll get very into the swing of things. However, obviously, as you know, the NAC has, peds, psychiatry. You won't really get OB, from what I understand. So I found that I had to find another resource that could kind of help me, round out and give me some sort of platform and way to, objectively know that I prepared for this, because you get to write it once a year, I think. So I used a resource that was very helpful. It's called Medical Training Express,
Okay.
and I think it's a cardiologist out of BC,
Okay.
and you can literally sign up. I think it costs about $600 when I did it, and you can either choose it's like $1,000 for the live classes, so you're actually doing like live OSCE training, or you can do $600 and it's like pre-recorded. That's what I did, and it really helped me. It's I can't remember the doctor's name, but he is spectacular, and he really gives you all the tools to really succeed on that exam. And I did quite well. I think it was one of the standout portions of my application for sure.
Nice.
So that's what I did for the NAC-OSCE, and then obviously a lot of practice, like I'm talking time practice, not
Yeah.
you and a couple friends grabbing a couple beers and just like laying back, like actually structured timers going off, exactly how you would go in the exam, the same shirt you would wear, the same shirt, the same stethoscope, the same tendon hammer, everything exactly how you do it in the exam.
Yeah.
That's how we did it. And we did it for like, I remember I had a week off. I happened to luckily have a week off before the exam. That's all we did.
Nice.
The QE1.
Yeah.
The QE1 is, I find, was a really tough test for me. I found that I had to write it in between kind of, my curriculum was, I think I was just getting off of, I had OB for 2 months.
Yeah.
And then I had like 3 exams for obstetrics gynecology, and then I had to write the QE1, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so tough. So truthfully, I think the QE1, if you can find a time where you have like either a month off, or you have like in between kind of like 3rd and 4th year, or if you could maybe like message your school and say, hey, I need a month to study, because it's a hard exam, and truthfully, I think you can only write it once. Like if you pass, that's your score. And what I'm finding is, through my own experience and through some of my colleagues' experience that have applied, the score matters. The score matters at certain universities. It matters for sure. Certain universities, they kind of just have the pass fail. I think they kind of just look to see if you pass fail. Like for example, just throwing one out there. I'm not sure if I can say things like this, but like I think University of Toronto for sure. I think you need a score objectively of like 250 plus.
Yeah.
That's what I'm finding. Or it's like interview, no interview. Like that's the first thing that they'll even look at. And like if you don't make it past that gate, that's it for you for Toronto internal medicine specifically. I think even family as well. They really like that score, and they really require a certain score. So, and as far as I understand, unless things have changed, once you pass that exam, that's it. That's your score. You can't rewrite it. So that exam, I think I could have planned better for it. If you want to take my advice, I think truthfully I should have, just like I did for the NAC, I think I should have gotten like a program or course. All I did was I did the Canada Q Bank, and I didn't really commit to it as much as I probably should have. And I read Toronto Notes, and I was just kind of like reading through it. But we all know Toronto Notes. It's a great resource, but it can be really dry. You know what I mean? Like you'll read one page, and by the time you get to the next page, you've forgotten everything from the last page. You know what I mean? And then midway through, you're like panicking. You're like, oh, I have to make notes on it. Then you're like, this is taking too long. It ends up being a disaster.
Yeah.
My friends that wrote the MCCQE1, and did extremely well on it, all of them I found had, 1, written the USMLEs as well.
Yeah.
And 2, have gone really hard on UWorld.
Gotcha.
They all did UWorld, and they all did spectacular on the exam, far better than me. So the QE1, I feel like I could have tackled it a lot better. I think question banks are going to be foolproof. If you're really like, oh my gosh, there's a million resources all over the place, you won't go wrong. If you run through UWorld 2 times and write, and you know what I mean? Like I think you're pretty much going to have a really good chance at performing quite well in that exam. Keep in mind that examination, has a lot of OB, psych, and it's variable. It's random. Like the person next to you will have like 90% OB, and you'll have like, 90% psych. And I'm like, what the heck? I studied so much internal medicine. I don't know how your experience was, Roupen.
So my experience was similar. Actually, what I found like helped me a lot is the USMLEs. Like USMLEs helped me to establish really strong base reward. Like so just a financial disclosure here. Like we are not supported by UWorld or any question bank or any company. It's just our opinions. This does not reflect like our employees or like any someone else. So this is completely our opinion. So
100%.
I did the U-word as you said, so it was for me like the main resource that I used, and I wrote the QE1 after writing the NAC-OSCe and after writing the USMLE. So that gave me like a good base, and like that for me, I wasn't in med school, and I was just like doing exams and observerships here and there. So that gave me a lot of time to prepare. But I feel like the USMLE is gave me a good base to write the QE1 for sure. And you were
That's yeah, that's what I found with my colleagues as well.
yeah.
Yeah, so that was the QE1. I found it to be a very tough exam. It was very long. It was 8 hours. It was very variable from person to person.
Yeah, it is.
Because there's a typing portion. So
Yeah.
I can remember my friend was right beside me writing, and obviously we had a barrier and everything. You have the mask, but there's a typing portion, and you write the first half. It's the MCQs, and then you get to the typing portion. And she's like, afterwards, she's like, I was so worried about my like exam, and was I not typing enough? But I happen to have like so many like type in free text or whatever questions, and like she didn't have that. Like it was different. It was more like select and rank. So she was like, am I writing a different exam? Like I'm like, and yeah, there's that much variability.
Yeah,
Truthfully.
I agree with you. And my understanding is you did not write the USMLEs.
So the USMLEs, I made a decision. I like a lot of the US resources. So I was a big fan of Sketchy Medical, Sketchy Micro, Step First Aid, I thought the US resources were amazing, and my plan was always to write it. When it came down to actually putting in the time to like allocating my time to really take it to the next level and get ready for the US exams, I found that I just knew myself. I felt that I would have compromised either my Sydney medical program curriculum. I was like, if I don't pass that, nothing matters. If I have 280 on step 1 and I don't pass my, medical school exams, it's useless. Mind you, one could argue that would have prepared me for it. Yeah. But I found that I just was spreading myself too thin. So by the time I got to clerkship and I really honed my eyes in on Canada, I realized that I'd probably spread myself too thin. And I made the decision to not write the USMLEs. Truthfully, I regret it. I think in a perfect world, what I would have done if I could have gone back is the USMLE step 1, I would have written it after second year. The end of second year, that break, right then and there, suck it up, write that exam. You've gone through all of the, preclinical kind of, the physiologies, the pathology, micro, you've gone over all of that. Now, prepare for the USMLE. It's going to consolidate all of that knowledge, and then you're going to have that exam, and you're never going to regret having that exam, because now you may need it down the track if you want to think about fellowships and whatnot. Even if you go to Canada, it's going to be helpful. So now, oddly enough, I'm thinking back. I actually had a friend that just wrote the USMLE. He's in urology. He wrote it literally a couple weeks ago, like into first year residency. And I might do the same, truthfully. But yeah, unfortunately, did not write the USMLE.
Okay, so we talked about the exams, but like, tell me a bit about like your research experience, publications. How was it? Did your med school help you to get into research or publish, or like, is it something that you did by yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I was very lucky because the Sydney medical program has a big emphasis on research. So to pass and to get your MD, you actually have to be a part of a research project.
Okay.
Most of them, you're kind of doing a project from inception, and it was interesting because I had gotten the advice that just pick something that sounds interesting. You won't know what you want to do, and you pick in first year. So I was scrolling through, and you kind of have to, you don't apply, you literally just kind of throw your name in a hat, and you're like, oh, I like this, and then the supervisor will message you and be like, you're accepted to this project. And the one I had picked was like in anesthesia. And I don't know, I mean, at that time, I was pretty certain I knew I wanted to do cardiology, internal medicine, but I was like, you know what, like, I don't know why, my heart was telling me, like, do something in cardio, you know what I mean? It's going to be helpful down the track. But I ended up just doing a project with an anesthesiologist. It was actually pretty cool. It was it was very niche. It was very niche. We were looking at the precision and accuracy of electromyography in patients who have a body mass index above 30. Essentially trying to see, there's three muscles that you can measure the electromyography, and it can essentially measure the amount of neuromuscular blockade
Yeah, yeah.
in that patient. So, and there's issues that can go along with that, like residual neuromuscular blockade can, recovery time and, aspiration risk, all these things. So you don't want to give too much neuromuscular blockade, right? So that was the idea behind it. So,
Got
but
it.
this project was actually really crazy. We were literally in the operating theater. We'd have to go and consent the patient, talk to the surgeon, be like, "Hi, we have this big electromyography box." It was like from the 80s, and it was two of us, and it was a 2-man/woman job, and literally one person would have to be right by the hand of the patient while the operation's happening, switching the electrodes from muscle to muscle, and every 20 seconds we'd get a train of 4, which was like the measurement, and it would make the muscle twitch. And then another person would be by the computer in the Excel document, looking at the screen, recording the numbers, and there'd be like 4-hour operations.
Oh my God.
Sometimes midway through, the surgeon would literally be like, I feel like you're compromising the sterile field. Get out of here. And we'll be like, oh my gosh, we just lost all this data. So it was a grueling project.
Wow.
Thankfully, it led to one first author publication, and one first author abstract, and then a second author. So it led to kind of like 3 sort of publications, which was nice. And it was a very good learning point. So, I was able to put together ethics, write a paper, actually do physical data collection. You know what I mean? That's very rare. I feel like a lot of people, you'll just do chart dives and things
Yeah.
like that. So we were literally collecting our own data. One thing also I had to do is we collected data on the subcutaneous tissue above the muscle. So I got experience with ultrasound, and that was really cool. So it was a good project, and I was very thankful that the Sydney Medical Program kind of pushed you to do that. I mean, that's what you required to get the MD. So I felt like I had a lot of support through my university. And then also, if you wanted to get involved in research, there was a lot of avenues to do so. I guess it's tough though, because I kind of knew I wanted to end up in Canada. So I remember when I was on electives, I was thinking like, oh, could I get involved in a project with somebody? But it's just tough. You know what I mean? Like you're there for, you're working with a staff for a week. You almost can't expect them to want to like take you on board. So it's tough. I would say definitely try and get involved with research, as early as possible. It's not the end all be all. It's not the end all be all at all. It's obviously going to help your application, but if you can get like one project that you can talk about, because when you're doing your CaRMS application, there's literally one section, research.
Exactly.
And in your interviews, it can come up, and you'll have something to talk about. You know what I mean? If you've done it.
Yeah.
If you haven't done it, why? You're just, you're leaving a hole in your application for no reason. Because I find that the jump from no to something is like a lot better than like, obviously people have like 40 publications, whatever. That's crazy, good for them. But you know what I mean? Like the person who has 1 compared to 5, if you have something to talk about and you learned about it, like if you have one good quality project that you really learned a lot, and it really opened your world to research and stuff, these are great talking points for interviews and for your overall actual your actual experience.
Nice. Okay, so let's move on and talk about like the electives or like observerships. Like, how did you do them? And I assume like you did electives because like you were in med school when you tried to come to Canada, or like do some electives here. So can you take me through the process?
100%.
And how was it?
So this is as an IMG, this is the most important thing. The most important thing. If your goal is to come back to Canada, you need to fight tooth and nail to get as many electives in Canada, in the specialty you want to apply to, as possible. You need to get as many as possible. With my program, I took every single opportunity to do electives back home. I was very thankful that the Sydney Medical Program had a program. They had something called Pacific Bridge, and it was just a term for, you could basically take one of your 2-month medicine blocks and do it in your home country, and it had to be your home country, which I was like, this is amazing. So I had my 2 months of electives, right? And then I had these 2 months of the blocks I should have done in Australia, but they allowed me to do it back home. So I ended up getting 4 months. So 4 total months. And I basically looked at it and said, hey, I'm all in on internal medicine. I'm all in on internal medicine. So I'm gonna essentially try to do as much general internal medicine. So CTU specifically.
Okay.
You know, if you're, and this was super helpful. I managed to get, I applied to as many, I wanted to do as much CTU as possible. If I could have done CTU 1, 2, 3, 4 months, I would have done it. Because the people, let's say you're applying to internal medicine, the people that are going to interview you, look at your application, know the person that writes a reference are going to be in general internal medicine.
Yeah.
If you go to some like outpatient cardiologist, you know, that's great. And if you like cardiology, that's awesome. But that reference letter and, you know, that connection and the experience you're going to get is not going to do as much benefit. It's not going to be as beneficial to you as if you did CTU. Your CTU experience will really shine through, because typically if you're studying elsewhere, not in Canada, if you're in the States, it's different. Sure, you'll have CTU, but in Australia, you don't have CTU. I've talked to my Ireland colleagues, or my colleagues that studied in Ireland, they didn't have CTU there either. So I was very lucky. So in the first month I came, I did outpatient cardiology at UBC. That was what I got. You know what I mean? I was using a portal called AFMC, and it was a really nerve-wracking process. I'm not gonna lie. It can be really tough. For a lot of the spots, it's purely a lottery-based system. So it's so frightening. You know, you're hoping to do, you know, this elective in like Toronto, for example, like CTU at Toronto, and you have to put yourself in a lottery. You know, they have multiple lotteries in the year, but I remember for Toronto, I really wanted CTU there, and I really wanted to do an elective there. And just to apply to the elective, you had to win the lottery. And there was 3 lotteries in the year. Obviously, all of my Canadian colleagues were applying, and some of them got it on the first time. And I remember I get the email, it's like, unfortunately, you were not selected. And it's not merit-based. It's literally throw your name in the hat, raffle, like this.
Wow.
And first time I didn't get it. Second time I didn't get it. And a good friend of mine also didn't get it either. And we were like, what the heck? Like, this is completely out of our power. Finally, the last, third one, I remember I was applying to, like, they had some like weird hepatology elective or whatever. I was like, I'm going to do that at least bare minimum. And it was really coming down to the wire. And with the third time, I finally got it. Nice. And after I applied, I got CTU at Toronto. I was so excited. Mind you, if you want to do internal medicine, the one place that doesn't do a lottery and is a very good experience is Queen's. Queen's internal medicine is very good. But let me go from the top, all of my electives, kind of what I did. So the first elective I did at UBC, did outpatient cardiology. That was awesome. If I could have done inpatient, I definitely would recommend doing that, because, you know, it's your electives. You want to work with doctors that, you know, will potentially know other internists, and, you know, you can get good inpatient experience. You have to really tailor your electives to what you want to do. I can't harp on this enough, because all of my talking points, my stories, my experiences, my personal letter experiences, all of them came from these electives.
Gotcha.
All of them came from these electives. Truthfully, nothing even I did in Australia. In that 4 months, I learned more about myself and myself as a clinician, compared to the, you know, first 3 years in Australia. It was that good of an experience.
Nice.
And yeah, I did outpatient cardiology. That was great, you know, but I was very happy to move on to the second elective I had, which was at Queen's, CTU. And there it was an amazing experience, you know, as a 3rd/4th year medical student. I remember, you know, and we know how it is too with our medical students here. We give them, you know, here's your 3 patients, you're rounding on them. You know, go and see them, take the history, do the physical exam, present me your management plan. And in Australia, it wasn't like that. You were just doing ward rounds. You were kind of like, you're like the shifting dullness on the wards, literally like going around, just scooting around, trying to find your space. And like, oh, yeah. Hi, my name's John. I'm a 3rd year medical student. You were just in the corner, and like literally the intern was taking the notes, the staff was taking the history, and you were just like shifting around like this. But like, no, here in Canada, it's like you are a big part of the team. Like you have your 3 to 4 patients, and some of them that really pick things up quickly, you'll get 5, 6 patients, and, you know, you'll see everything and you'll manage it. And the staff will literally have a lot of trust in your assessment, which was amazing. I remember that was like crazy. It was a bit daunting initially. I remember landing on CT for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, they want me to see the patient, do the history, you know, my volume assessment of the patient, that's that. Like if they're, you know, if they're overloaded, sure, we're gonna like, I remember I was like, yeah, I think he's overloaded. Sure, let's 40 of IV Lasix. I was like, do you want to go review? I don't know the JVP, maybe I missed it or something. But I remember that was really good. And I can remember in my CaRMS interview literally talking about exact moments where I was on CTU. And I had a couple amazing, you know, patient encounters, and it was all from those electives. Kingston was great. I highly recommend it. And, you know, it's $800. I remember it was a little more expensive than the other electives, but it was none of this lottery business. You know what I mean? Like I was able to actually do internal medicine, general internal medicine, CTU, clinical teaching units at a Canadian, you know, institution. And I ended up getting a great reference from that elective, and that was awesome. Then I, once again, was in Ontario. My next elective was in McMaster, and then once it was a lottery situation, and I happened to just get gastroenterology, which was a great. It was a really good elective as well. I had a chance to do a lot of paracentesis, and volunteered at the paracentesis clinic there, and saw a lot of cool gastroenterology cases. So that was awesome. And then I did my last elective when I was kind of all, because if you can arrange it in a way where you do your hardest electives last, you know, you'll be a well-oiled machine when you get to that elective. So
Yeah.
I happened to get Toronto CTU, and, you know, there's a bit of a mercenary aspect to it as well, right? So, you know, when you can look at CaRMS, you can look at all the data, and truthfully, you can see, you know, let's say you want to do internal medicine, you're an IMG. You can look at the programs and see, oh, Montreal has 0 spots. Do you want to do an elective there?
Yeah.
Probably not, right?
Exactly.
0 spots? Like, no. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Or I don't know the exact data, but look and see. Newfoundland, no spots, 1 spot for IMGs, internal medicine. So, you know, you need to be smart about it. There's a bit of a mercenary aspect for sure. You have to seek out and put yourself in the best position possible to match. So I looked at Toronto and I said, wait a second, there's 52 spots in internal medicine, and there's 12 spots in Toronto. I have to do everything in my power to do an elective here. And I got it. And you know, it was an amazing elective. Doing CTU there, I thought was like really good. I found myself like consolidating all the experience I got in like my first 3 months of electives, and like obviously pre-clerkship. And I was able to get, you know, very good reference letter, come up with a lot of cool clinical and cool patient encounters and stories. And once again, I use those stories in my interviews, in my personal letters, and all of this kind of added up and summed up to why I wanted to do internal medicine. You know what I mean? It gave me this really good thematic story, and it was all 100% genuine, right? And that's how you have to be.
Exactly. I think like this is one of the important things, like to touch base on whatever you do here, like you're going to get experience, and like open your eyes when doing electives or observerships here. Like open your eyes, because like you want to pick up stories of a human interaction and something that to be genuine, like because like that is the thing that you want to tell when you're doing interviews, or like you're meeting people. Oh, I've been in this situation, I did this, I did that, I learned this, I learned that. So this is really important, especially if it happened here in Canada. So it gives like a really nice touch for your application. Nice. So after the electives and the research and the exams, tell me a bit about like what like extracurricular things you did and help you, like you think that helped you when you try to come back to Canada, like volunteering or sport or whatever.
So I think this is something you can do very easily when
Mm-hmm.
you first get to your medical program. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you may, I remember when I initially was going into it and starting medical school, I was like, oh, John, you need to, you know, buckle down, and, you know, you should try and just stay in your room and try and study as much as possible. You have to be
Yeah.
super smart. You know, there's some scholarships maybe you can get. Like, you need to sit down and study as much as possible. And then, like, very quickly, thankfully, very quickly, I realized it's a completely foolish way to approach it.
Yeah.
I think the best thing you can do is get involved in your program. You're going to make friends that way. It's going to look great on your CV. You're going to be probably a better student and more immersed in your program by doing this. So
Yeah.
I quickly realized that's not the way I want to go about it. So I remember I touched down in Australia. I, you know, obviously was international, and there was a year representative, and right away I campaigned for it. I ran for it. I remember there was like 16 applicants, and no Canadian, no international had ever been the rep. As far as I've heard, yeah. And I remember I was like, no, I'm gonna try and really get this. And I didn't really know too many people, right? It was like very early into first year, and yeah, I was like, how can I like make myself stand out? And I ended up actually making a campaign video, which the entire time it was like more of a joke more than anything, just to show that like I'm like a fun person. Like I was reading a book upside down, and like I was just like doing stupid things. Like, you should vote for me, and I was like on a treadmill running. It was just, I made a whole campaign video, and I think it was actually on YouTube for a bit.
Nice.
And the day before voting started, literally or maybe a couple hours before voting started, I put it on the Facebook group, and it blew up. It was a really well done campaign video where and it really just resonated with people. So I ended up getting the position.
Wow.
And the president at our first kind of block party or whatever, I remember the president at the time of the Sydney Medical Program, it's one of the students, a student president.
Yeah.
He told me, your campaign video, they're gonna implement a new rule that that's not allowed anymore, because I ended up getting 260 out of the 350 votes.
Wow.
A lot of them, yeah, just myself. So it was crazy. I was this Canadian guy, and I just came up and managed to get this year representative role, which honestly, it was a great. Pardon me?
You just shake the boat, eh?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I remember, it was crazy. The next day, I remember I had anatomy practicals, and everyone was quoting things from my video, and they were ooh, it was really surreal experience. I felt like a celebrity for a moment there.
Nice. Nice.
But so that was cool. And that role was really great. Once again, good opportunity to, get involved in the program, talk with faculty. I remember we ended up actually that. So it was myself and then another girl in the class, and we were the year reps. And I remember we made some really positive change. I think we ended up implementing a transition from peer-based learning to team-based learning, which was a little switch there where. And then also we were able to get an extra week of vacation the next year. So there were some things that we actually made some objective changes in the program. And my stamp was on it. You know what I mean? So that was great.
Yeah.
And these are good things to talk about in the interview. That came up in the CaRMS interview. You know what I mean? Just a little thing like that. And then I continued to get involved. So, I did other things. I threw a masquerade ball. It was a really, once again, made a campaign video for that too. If you don't notice, there's a little theme here. Any chance I get to make a video here. And Roupen, I'm sure you've seen my video here in internal medicine.
Yeah, I did.
Really honest. Yeah. So I threw a masquerade ball. That was an amazing thing to get involved in. It involved all 4 years. It was this big extravagant event, a $50,000 budget. And that was really fun. And, a lot of planning went into that. And then also kind of to just hone in and make my, to kind of round out my application, I wanted to get involved with something because I was really passionate about doing residency back home and in Canada. So I actually ended up getting senior international representative as well.
Wow.
And I found that all of these kind of really helped my application significantly.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I think it was the NAC-OSCe and I think some of that extracurriculars that really shined through. And then something prior to medicine, I coached Special Olympics for 10 years too. So don't forget about these previous experiences that you've had that made you this well-rounded, amazing, candidate. Don't forget about these things because that came to help as well. I touched upon a few points there as well.
Nice.
Because basketball was a passion of mine, and I had done Special Olympics for 10 years, and there were some great stories from that as well and great experiences.
Wow.
But yeah, get involved as much as possible. I give that advice to all of my. Because I do talks for some of the potential Canadians studying abroad, and that's one of my number one advice.
Yeah.
I agree. Advice.
Also, so in my previous interviews, with other international medical graduates, we talk about the candidate roles, and this highlights the leadership role that you took over the years during your university. You got involved early, and you will always that you show that you're a leader, you're an advocate, you're a person that you can work with other people. So like those stories that you tell during your interviews, it will show the program that you can make change. You're a fun person to work with. So I totally agree with you. Yeah. And something that a lot of the questions that I get, like, should I mention my experiences before medical school? Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like your experience of coaching, like it adds a lot because it shows who you are as a person. And when you apply to medicine, it's not who you are as a physician, it's also who you are as a person in whole. So yeah. So you did the electives and you wrote the exams, and like you had a lot of opportunities to like leader roles. Now tell me a bit about like applying to CaRMS, the interviews. How did you prepare? What resources you use? How was it? Like it's a nerve-wracking process. That's what I hear.
Oh, CaRMS. CaRMS is definitely, you have to obviously set aside, quite a bit of time, and
Yeah.
it's a whole different beast in my opinion. CaRMS, there's so much to it, right? Because you're not just applying to one program.
Yeah.
It's not like residency, apply, done. One letter, this. You are, in some cases, you're applying to multiple specialties at multiple universities. So it's not a single race. It's a little bit of a marathon, in my opinion, because the application is only one aspect of it, right? You have the application, then you have, potentially interviews, flying, all the accommodation, all of this. Oh, and then, at the same time, you got to get these reference letters and whatnot. So it's a lot of planning, in my opinion. You need to start, I would say, third year, start to think about it. First and second year, learn about medicine, really hone in on the basics. Then third year, when you're starting to think about electives, keep a book with you. Keep a book with you, and start your CV as soon as possible. Any experience that you get, like when I was start your CV as soon as possible, and have two CVs. Have one CV where it's kind of like, all of your leadership positions and the role, the time frames you did it, and a description of it. And then you have that long CV, and then you have that short resume almost, where it's like bullet point, boom, 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 boom. And if you start to build that CV, from way early on, let's say the start of medicine, when you get to CaRMS, really it's going to be a lot of copy and paste. You're going to have all the information there, because CaRMS wants everything. Every experience you've ever done, they want the dates, the time you did it, a description of it, who you worked with.
Yeah.
They want everything. And you know what? It takes a long time inputting this in. You cannot go 3 days before CaRMS and try to endeavor this task. You will do yourself a disservice. You want to start months in advance. And you can start by just making that CV and updating all these experiences. And truthfully, if you get a chance to kind of look at CaRMS and kind of what they want very early on, it's going to actually push you and drive you to get involved and do these things. Because you're going to be like, I don't want to have this CaRMS application where there's a gaping hole, or you don't want any holes in your application. You want to be very well put together and give yourself the best chance possible. So CaRMS, I started very early. As soon as I could possibly make that account and start inputting some of the information, I did that. I think it was like,
also applies, sorry to just to add a comment, like this advice also applies like even to Canadians who are studying here, or like any IMG there, or any Canadian who or any person trying to apply to CaRMS, started as soon as possible. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Sorry, my friend, go ahead.
Yeah, so as soon as I could go in there and input the information, I was doing that. And truthfully, it literally takes every aspect of your application, skills, characteristics. There's so many different little sections, and truthfully, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but it was like leadership, research, your clerk, your clinical skills, your like clerkship positions. Every single one is very daunting, but you have to understand that you don't have to. They don't give you an hour to do it. It's not an exam. You have a long time to do this, so you're not going to cram. You're going to start as soon as possible. And you're going to make that CV, and you're going to have all that information ready. Because I remember that helped me significantly. That's one aspect of it.
Yeah.
Personal letters is another big aspect of it. And I felt like I could remember being like in first year medicine, already fearful of the personal letter and being like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to make this captivating? How am I going to make this spectacular? Like, how am I going to do this? Like I in my mind, I was always just like fearful of the personal letter for some reason. Because I was like, I have to have this like grand story. And when it came down to it, I probably edited it like 150, 200 times. I'm not even kidding you. I was applying to 8 internal medicine programs, and each freaking program wanted a little bit of a different letter. Some had very specific questions. They all had different word counts. So the way I did it, and I'm not sure if this will pertain to you if you want to do internal medicine, it probably will, is I kind of broke down each program, what they kind of wanted and the questions they had into kind of like almost Lego blocks. So, you know, for example, a lot of the programs wanted your why internal medicine. So I had a good paragraph for that. That was a Lego block. Then, you know, some would want like, what research have you done? And I made a little spiel for that. And I could kind of take these paragraphs and form a personal letter, and then I would make sure to make it cohesive. One thing in those personal letters that was, you know, quite often I found that they required was like, you really want to show, you don't want to tell, you want to show why. You know what I mean? You don't want to say I'm a hard worker. You know, that's not going to work. You want to show them, you know, for example, you worked through this, or, you know, you were volunteering on the weekends to do extra call shifts as a clerk because, you know, the team was down. That shows somebody that, you know, you're a hard worker. You don't have to tell me. I can infer that from your statements, you know. Or my why internal medicine, I remember describing a story of the first time I saw the JVP. And that led to like me saying the patient was overloaded, and then we diuresed the patient. You know, that was a cool story for my why internal medicine. You know, I had other cool stories where I taught a patient Braille, primary Braille. And that was a really cool thing where I kind of, you know, showed my interviewers, you know, going above and beyond, and not just saying, you know, I'm someone who goes above and beyond. You know what I mean? You need to really show. So one thing I do recommend, and I'm not sure if I've said this yet, but also those moments where, you know, you go home and you're like, wow, that was, you know, a really important case or important clinical interaction, you know, not just for like, not just for clerkship, but in your like career as a clinician. You feel like that's like a career defining moment, you know, where you either you put together, you know, a constellation of symptoms and made a crazy diagnosis, or you went above and beyond for advocating for a patient. Write these cases down. I had them in my phone, in my notes, in my iPhone, and I could go through. And these were actual genuine stories, you know, genuine clinical cases. And these came up in my personal letters and in my interviews. It's all you have to plan. As soon as you hit third year, you know, you want to have that CV and you want to write down these clinical cases because you are going to need them. You know, they're going to ask you, I think almost in every interview I had was like, when was the moment you failed? And, you know, I had that down. I wrote a clinical case where, unfortunately, you know, I did a med rec. I was admitting a patient at CTU in Toronto, and I did a med rec, and a patient had, you know, salbutamol puffer for PRN, and I was a clerk, and I did it regular. Yeah. And this patient's blood pressure went up, and unfortunately, he had a stroke. You know, it might have been something else, but, you know, this was a scenario where, you know, I had documented this mistake, learned from it, understand the importance of a medication reconciliation, and also had a really good story for my personal letters and CaRMS. I don't think that one made my personal letter. That was more of interviews. Yeah. Other things about CaRMS, maybe we'll just touch upon. We move further. I think that's quite a bit of information. Yeah, a lot of planning. Start early, and reference letters, do them as soon as possible as well. Yeah, I'm just gonna add for the personal statement. I think like also like for the interviews, guys. Like I think telling the stories during your interviews or personal statements is very important. Anyone can say about him or herself, like, yeah, like I'm like X kind of person, I have like X qualities, but like you can never show this unless if you tell a story. Telling your stories, it's like it's a skill that you can acquire and you can train on, and it's really important. So John is saying like something very, which I really agree with, like during your electives or observerships, or like during your experience, like if you're early in your trying to apply to CaRMS, if something happens with you and you feel like, oh, I can mention this, so like just take a note, write it on your phone. Like we all have like smartphones and we can talk about it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so yeah, go ahead. Like what else do you want to talk about CaRMS, my friend? I just wanted to say with the reference letters, that's another thing that I
Yeah.
can remember in first year being like, it was the personal letter and the reference letters, and be like, oh my gosh, asking them, you know, they're not going to want to give me a letter.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what if oh gosh, what if they don't say the right things? I heard that you couldn't see the letter. And there's a really good strategy that I feel is tried and true. When you get to your electives, you have to find out how long you're going to work with a certain staff,
Yeah.
right? You need to know this. You know, if it's 3 days, probably not a good idea to ask that person for a letter. You know what I mean? If it's the first 3 days, don't do it. 2 weeks, that's a pretty good time frame, because now you can have, once again, it's a mercenary aspect to this. You got to know, okay, I have 2 weeks with this staff. This is what your plan is going to be. Right from the gate, you're going to be upfront and say, hey, I am very interested in internal medicine. I'm hoping to ask you, I'm hoping to ask you for a letter, a personal, a letter of reference.
Yeah.
You know, I plan on applying to the internal medicine program here, and it'd be really, really awesome if you could provide me with this. Now, I plan on actually, you know, showcasing my skills and working through and learning. And, you know, in doing so, I feel that it'd be really helpful if in the first week, you know, we have 2 weeks together. In the first week, I would love to get feedback midway through. That would be
Exactly.
extremely helpful, so that anything any of the feedback you give me, I can get a chance to work on it and showcase that I am, you know, someone who reflects, someone who builds upon feedback, and someone who's, you know, very coachable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd love to have an exit moment where we can have some more feedback, and that creates a really good story for your personal letters just inherently there, right? So, you know, the staff can say, you know, I worked with John. He was very coachable. You know, he approached, you know, asked for feedback, you know, set the dates even. And then, you know, how good will it look where, you know, John came on service and, you know, he couldn't see the JVP, you know, his exam sucked. And then, you know, in the first week I worked with him, and in the second week he turned everything around. You know what I mean? I mean, it makes, I think, for a little bit more structure for something that can seem so chaotic and so subjective. You know what I mean? I find that I'm always striving for objective, and I want to do away with the subjective. And I felt that that was the most objective way to approach it.
Yeah.
That worked very well for me. And I actually happened to get a chance to look at some of my letters, and recently, I had a look at them, and because you can email and ask for them, and they actually ended up turning out quite well. I thought better than I would have expected. And I think the strategy to that was, one, I always did that with the staff. And two, I made sure to ask the staff that I worked with in the second half of the elective. So think about it, you had like 2 weeks to kind of like prime yourself, get ready, even a week. And then, you know, if
Exactly.
then you work with a new staff, because that's the thing how it works in the Canadian system here is staff kind of change every week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm just going to add something there, like asking early for feedback. I think like it's really important. I have similar experience where like I was working with a staff, like I'm doing observership. I didn't have the chance to do electives and IMG because like I was already graduated when I came here. So I asked for the feedback in my first week, and initially I thought, oh, I'm doing well, like that's what I thought, but apparently there was like a much space for improvement. And if I did not ask for the feedback, I would never knew like what can I improve, and I would just go blindly finish the 2 weeks. So I thought I did well, but like asking for the feedback early and showing your staff that you change in the second week, it makes a huge difference. So I totally agree with you. That's a really important point to bring that point up. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Nice, nice. Okay, John. So anything else? Like if you want to like say two-liners for people who are trying to apply to residency, whether like they're international medical graduates or Canadian medical graduates, like what would be like your two-liner advice?
Well, I'm someone who usually goes, I find that I'm very tangential and I can ramble on. So two-liner might be tough for me, Roupen, but I'll try. I think
Okay.
truthfully, if I can summarize one thing, and I think it's very tried and true, just take a leap of faith. Take a leap of faith. It might be scary. You know, I've had so many colleagues in my undergrad who were like, you know, they did the health science degree, and I think one guy applied to UBC 5 times. And, you know, I'm here now and I'm in residency, and they're still doing a master's or going around. take a leap of faith. Just do it. If you have the means financially and you're in, I say, and you're kind of on the fence, allow me to push you and go for it. 2, when you're in the thick of things, there will be a moment where you're going to panic. You're going to panic and say, nothing's going to work out. I'm not going to make it to Canada. I'm not going to get a job. I'm going to have to go work retail or something like this. No, it finds a way to work itself out. I promise you, it finds a way to work itself out. It just somehow does. If you fail an exam, you write it again. If you fall down, pick yourself back up. It finds a way to work itself out. And those are my probably 2 pearls, I would say.
Nice. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much for sharing all these experiences. And also you were so honest and so direct. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure your experience will help many people there who are they are in the same boat. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, John.
My absolute pleasure. Bye, guys. All the best. Hopefully see you in Ottawa.
Yeah.